Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us and for being here today to talk all things out of home. I just want to start by congratulating you on winning the 2023 OAAA Rising Star Award, which is a huge accomplishment. You know, you've long been someone that people look up to in the industry, and you're a very highly influential leader. So do you want to start by telling us how you began in the out-of-home industry?
Well, thank you for that compliment. Very much appreciate it, and thank you for having me here today. I really didn't know what I wanted to do after undergrad. So I started off in what is now called retail media with News America Marketing, which is a division of News Corp, or it was at the time. And I knew from doing that, it was in ad sales, that I wanted to be more on the marketing side. So I found a position for a marketing copywriter online for this company called Broadsign. And I knew nothing about digital signage or digital out of home, but I got the job and worked my way up in the company and just fell in love with the out-of-home industry.
Of course, that's awesome. And I'm sure since you've been around in the industry for a while, you've probably seen and experienced quite a few changes. What are some of the biggest changes you've seen in the industry throughout your career?
Well, in the beginning, when we would go to different conferences like this one, it would largely be about static out of home, right? So the print and paste boards, and maybe there would be a session or two about digital. And how things have changed. We introduced mobile and how people can engage with out of home with their mobile phone, and then programmatic came into the space, and I just really ran with programmatic because it's changed so much. What we can do now with data for audience targeting and optimization all the way through measurement is really changing perceptions about how people can use out of home in their marketing campaigns.
For sure, there's definitely been tons of changes, tons of advancements, but you know, despite these advancements, there's still a lack of female representation in out of home. In your opinion, what do you think the industry needs to do to change, and what do we need to do as a whole to be able to attract more women to the ad tech space?
From my own experience, 10 odd years ago, when it was my first year at Broadsign, I would go to a bunch of trade shows, and there would be booth babes, as they were called, which I really did not like because they would attract people to the booths at these shows, but they wouldn't know how to speak about the product, and that really bothered me. So I really made it a point at Broadsign to bring in people who were attending these shows who could talk about our offering at that time, and I know that you've continued to do this. And I also needed some role models to emulate and look up to in the industry, so I started something called Leading Ladies of Digital Signage, and Broadsign supported this effort, and I would interview female executives in our space, learn about their career paths. And they just welcomed me with open arms, and it means so much that you've gone and taken the torch on this, and you're continuing to do that, because it's conversations like these and the support from companies to have these initiatives that's what shines a light on anybody who considers themselves to be not like the rest of people in the room, right?
For sure, it's definitely an important initiative to carry forward, and you've done so much for our industry, so thank you for all of that. What advice would you give women wanting to move up in the ad tech space?
It's interesting because there does seem to be a lot of advice out there for how women should behave to get ahead. And my parents taught me before I started, my first internship ever. I was at CTV Montreal before I finished undergrad, and they said just be yourself. And so I would say I've seen a lot of female executives with very different personalities and different business behaviors, and they've gotten to where they are based on being true to themselves. So be whoever you are and just live that authentic life, and then always raise your hand. So I think that a lot of opportunities might have come to me because I'm ready to go, I'll raise my hand, even if maybe other people might not have thought that I could do it yet, and then you just prove that you can, right?
For sure, that is fantastic advice. What's next for you in your exciting and successful career? Anything interesting coming up that you can share?
Well, I'm almost finished my doctorate, so I'm studying digital out of home and connected television academically on the side. I'm really excited to share my learnings and insights with the industry. I have a few sneak peeks into that today at AdTech Out of Home here in Toronto, so it'll be good to see how the audience responds to some of my perceptions. And in terms of work, it's just really doing whatever I can to help continue to advance our space. There's so much change going on in the media landscape right now, and I always like laying the foundation for out of home to be able to leapfrog instead of just play catch up. So working really hard on making sure we do that.
That's great. You're a very busybody. We wish you the best of luck with that. That's a great segue into our next questions. You mentioned you're working really hard to advance the industry and ensure common goals of all of us. What are some of the biggest challenges you think still face the out-of-home industry today?
Well, I think that a lot of marketers still view our space as this traditional medium, so they think that they know it because they might have dealt with it 20 years ago. And then there are other marketers who consider it emerging and will only dedicate test budgets to the space. So we're in this weird position where we just have to prove ourselves to the industry as a large that out of home has really made great strides, even in just the past few years. So there's a big re-education process that we have to do on the buy side. On the consumer side, people love out of home. So we've already done our job, and people trust our space. They react very favorably to ads in the out of home channel. So it's just the marketers that we have to work on.
Just that little key piece
Exactly.
right there. I was watching an older interview that you did, and you said that out of home can be looked at as a small fish in a big advertising pond. Do you still feel like that's the case? And what do you think we need to do to be able to capture kind of a bigger share of ad spend?
I have to say I'm so impressed. First by the questions.
I did my homework.
Exactly, and then also by knowing that you did that, so well done. I do think that in some regards we can be like a big fish in a small pond because the industry does like to stick together, and that's very normal. It's almost like a small town, if you will. It's like a small global town. But I have seen a lot of companies make efforts to get out of the comfort zone and be part of larger associations that are geared to media that aren't just out of home. And so we're doing a good job of being that small fish in a big pond, and I do think we're growing as well.
Yes, that's great. Every year that goes by, I think we become a little bit more and more present, which is good in the media landscape. Switching gears a little bit, so as a millennial, I'm sure you're super aware of how we're used to being targeted, primarily with digital ads. What kind of opportunities do you see for out of home to engage with younger audiences who are so used to that digital landscape?
Out of home is an interesting one for younger audiences because they are typically not used to not having control over the ad, right? So in digital formats, you can skip an ad, you can ignore it, but in out of home, it's just there. And I've seen toddlers go up to screens and touch them, expecting that it's going to interact. So I think that by growing up in a digital environment where we have place-based interactive screens, people are just going to be more prone to using them, especially when the call to action is one that's enticing or there's information that they need to glean from it. And then also when it comes to that social media out-of-home relationship, where there's great creative, or for celebrities where they might themselves be in the creative, we see a lot of picture taking with out-of-home screens and then sharing on social media for that organic social reach. So I think there's a lot of use that comes to younger people when engaging with out-of-home, and then marketers can see that too across their results.
For sure, and it's such a highly coveted audience. Do you think the industry overall is kind of making strides towards connecting better with these audiences, and what do you think we need to do to take that next step?
Definitely, and I love that you're focusing on the audience instead of the technology as a starting point, because it is imperative that we think about what do people want from us instead of just developing something for tech's sake because we can do it. We've seen a lot of people really lean into these 3D-like anamorphic creative displays that you'll see the images of the products popping out at you, and people love this. So I think if we can do more of that, making sure that when appropriate, if the creative can be fun, people lean in, and then also where appropriate, if there's an important message to get across, like COVID, a couple years ago, governments really used out of home for PSAs. So there are a lot of opportunities that our medium comes very much in handy depending on the need. And so it's, again, on us, kind of full circle with our conversation, to just make sure that everyone's educated with what we can do.
For sure. That's great. And maybe just one last question. Do you have a number one pick in terms of your favorite technology advancement or anything you think will really drive the industry forward in the next few years?
Well, I should probably say AI in terms of, what it can do for all of advertising. It's going to definitely be changing all of our jobs within the next 5 years, and it's doing so in a very quick fashion. However, if we roll that back and just look at what's changing the industry right now, the ability to automate the buying process of out of home cannot be overstated. It has changed the game. It's no longer an onerous pursuit to put together an out of home media plan. It can be done in one platform with the rest of whatever else a media buyer is strategizing against. And I think that we should be very proud that we've taken our space to this place where it's apples to apples across most of the metrics that a marketer is looking for.
Absolutely. It's been amazing to see how far we've come in just a few years, and I'm so looking forward to seeing where we're going to go from here. So,
Me too.
Stephanie, thank you so much for being here today and joining us, and thank you for this fantastic discussion. We're really looking forward to the event and seeing all of the insights that come out of it. So really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, and let's keep this conversation going.
For sure.